Habib is saying, whenever anyone sees anything that they like or admire, they should say, MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah.
اللهم بارك فيه.
Allahumma barik fi. Allah bless.
أولادك، أموالك، أصحابك، أي أحد.
Whether it is your wealth, your children, your family, anything that you admire and you desire, you say, MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah, and you ask Allah to bless it and bless it for you, and there won't be any harm that comes to that thing.
لأن الإنسان عندما يحب شيء وش اسمه يستحسنه قد ربك سبحانه وتعالى جعل إفرازات تخرج من الإنسان تصيب هذا تضره.
Because sometimes when a person admires something, there is a certain type of energy that exudes from a person which might harm that thing.
فما عليه إلا أن يعكس أو يستحسنه ويقول ما شاء الله اللهم بارك فيه اللهم زيده خلاص تنكسر.
And so when a person sees something that they like of themselves or others and they say, oh mashallah, how nice this is, they must ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless that person, and they say mashallah la quwwata illa billah.
أيوة. ونحن الآن هنا لما دخلنا فرحنا بكم وفرحنا بهذه الوجيه الطيبة فقلنا ما شاء الله لا قوة اللهم بارك فيهم.
And Habib says, when we entered and we saw all of you sitting here in your beautiful faces, we said MashaAllah la quwwata illa billah, and we ask Allah to bless all of you.
وإذا جاءت البركة ما ظهرت الآثار.
And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts blessings in something, then these things leave a legacy.
عمر بدون بركة وإن طال لا فائدة منه.
A person who lives a long life, but a life which is not blessed, then there is no benefit in this life.
مال وإن كثر لا بركة فيه لا فائدة منه.
Wealth, even though it might be abundant, if there is no blessings in it, there is no benefit.
أولاد وإن كثروا بدون بركة لا فائدة منه.
Children as well, one may have many children, but if there are no blessings in them, there is no benefit.
فاطلبوا دائما البركة.
So ask always from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for blessings in everything you have.
طيب الآن نشوف الأسئلة هذه إن شاء الله، وإذا بعد ذلك إذا كملت الأوراق إذا شيء حد عنده شيء يتكلم.
He says we're going to try and answer some of the questions that were asked, and after the questions, if we are done and anyone still has anything else to ask or say, then the floor is open for that. No. The question is asking, sometimes when a person prevents themselves from a certain type of food, they can begin to yearn for that food, and then is it a praiseworthy method to invite friends or guests and a person then shares this food with them?
ما شاء الله. هذا أسلوب من أساليب قهر النفس، إلا يريد يأكل الرجال بقى أسلوب ثاني.
This is one way to overpower the nafs. However, it's also a ruse to try and give your nafs what it wants.
عزمتم لله ولا لأجل تأكل معهم.
He says, did you leave it because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or did you leave it so that you can find a way to still get hold of it by inviting other people?
حيلة.
He says this is a ruse.
إن قدرت تمنع نفسك أفضل.
He says if you made a decision, then one should try their best to stay away from something, especially if they have taken that decision.
بل سلفنا كثير منهم يحبون ايش اسمه ان لا يتميزوا بشيء، فمثلا كما ذكر لكم ما ادري متى ان الحبيب عمر احيانا صائم ويحضر مع الناس ويعمل حركات هكذا ولا ياكل ابدا لا ياكل.
And it is the practice of the pious that they don't like to be distinguished or known for anything, or to be made out as, oh, this person is fasting today and everyone else is not fasting. So for example, Habib Umar as well, sometimes if he is fasting and he is invited somewhere or people are invited to his house, he still moves the food around the plate and he moves his hands, and people won't even notice that he is still fasting and he hasn't eaten anything.
فهؤلاء بعض الصالحين ما يحب أحد يرى حسناتهم كما نحن ما نحب أحد يرى سيئاتنا.
He says the pious don't like people to see their good deeds just as we don't like people to see our bad deeds.
يخفون حسناتهم كما يخفي أحدنا سيئاته.
They hide their good deeds just as we hide our bad deeds.
لكن من كان قدوة فلا ينبغي له أن يستتر بحسناته حتى يقتدوا به الناس.
However, if someone is a leader or someone who people look up to, then they are allowed to expose their good deeds so that people may emulate them in that.
مثل السنة في البيت أفضل، لكن إذا حد بيقتدي بك لما تعملها في المسجد بيقتدي بك أفضل أعملها في المسجد لا يقتدى بك.
So if the sunnah salahs before and after the fard, it is recommended that one perform these in one's home. However, if someone is a leader or people look up to them, then they should read it in the masjid so people can emulate them in this.
ومثل الصدقة كذلك.
And likewise with regards to charity.
أنت بين أغنياء بخلاء لكن لو تصدقت أمامهم بيستحون بعدين بيصدقون وما أتصدق قدامهم.
So if you are in the company of some people who are wealthy but they are stingy and miserly, and if they see you giving charity, they'll feel shy and they'll also then start to give charity, then in this particular circumstance, it's good to give charity openly.
طيب.
هل مسموح الإنسان يشرب ماء كثير أو يشرب قهوة إذا هذا خلي يأكل أقل يقلل من أكل.
نعم.
Questioner are we able to use water or coffee to prevent us from eating or eating too much?
أيوة يشرب قهوة بحيث لا تضره ما هو لأجل ما يأكل وبعدين تضره القهوة.
He says a person can do this, but they should do it to the extent, for example, if they're drinking coffee, to the extent that it won't harm them. There's no benefit if a person drinks too much coffee, which then leads to them their health being harmed.
لأن بعض الأشياء الإكثار منها يضر وإن كان طيب.
There are things which if a person has too much of them, even though it might be something good, but it will become harmful if one is overly excessive in it.
لما جاءت هنا قبل حوالي 90 سنة أو 100 سنة المجاعة ما في أكل أبدا إلا لحم فيأكلون لحم أغنام حتى ورمت أجسادهم من كثرة اللحم مرض كثرتهم.
About 90 to 100 years ago, there was the famine that overtook Hadramaut, and people didn't have anything else to eat besides meat. And so the only thing they were eating was meat, which actually led to them becoming over-bloated and sick.
فيأكل الإنسان بس بحيث شيء لا يضر أهم شيء لا يضر.
And so a person can eat or drink these things as long as it does not harm them.
إذا جرب أن الماء قبل الأكل يقلل من الأكل طيب زين.
And if a person has experienced that if they drink a little bit more water, they then eat less, then there's nothing wrong in this.
طيب.
ما هو الساعة المقترحة للنوم كل ليلة؟ The question is asking what is the recommended hours of sleep one should have.
أفضل وقت للنوم بعد العشاء إلى منتصف الليل أو بعد منتصف الليل بقليل.
Habib is saying the best time to sleep is immediately after the Isha Salah up to about midnight or a little bit after midnight.
أما وقت السحر ما ينبغي الإنسان يكون نائم الساعة في هذا الوقت الآن الفجر الساعة 4 يعني الساعة 1 الساعة 2 الساعة 3 ما ينبغي له أن يكون إلا إن أراد أن ينام نومتين فينام أول الليل ثم يقوم من نصف الليل ثم ينام آخر الليل قليل لا بس.
And so the last portion of the night, and in today's times, now times Fajr is at 4 o'clock, so 3 to 1 o'clock in the morning, it is not recommended for a person to be sleeping at this time, except if a person sleeps in the beginning of the night after Isha, they get up a little earlier, they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then they go back to sleep. Then there's nothing wrong if they sleep at the last portion.
وكان كثير من السلف يقومون من منتصف الليل إلى قبيل الفجر ثم قليل نصف ساعة قبل الأذان هكذا ثم يقوم للصلاة.
Many of the pious would get up at about midnight and they would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala up to about an hour or half an hour before Fajr, and then they would take a little nap, and then at the time of Fajr they would get up again.
فغالبا بعد العشاء إلى نصف الليل بعد نصف الليل هذا ولو ساعات قليلة فيها بركة زين الجسم.
And if a person sleeps immediately after Isha up until midnight, even though there might just be 1 or 2 hours, there is an immense amount of blessings in this sleep.
نعم. أما بالنهار غالبا يرتاح الإنسان في الظاهر لكن ما يأخذ راحة الجسم حقيقية عند الظاهر.
If a person sleeps in the day, their bodies might get some external rest, but the body doesn't get its internal nourishment that it needs from those hours of sleep.
نعم. وبعض سلفنا كذلك ما هو لازم ينام يضطجع هكذا يسترخي هكذا ولو نصف ساعة إن جاء النوم يا حبذا وإن لم يأتي النوم في خير كبير. نعم.
Many of the pious as well, they would merely lay down to rest their bodies. If sleep came, alhamdulillah, if sleep didn't come, they would still remain in that position.
طيب.
ماذا نفعل إذا كان النتيجة من الجوع كثرة النوم وقلة النشاط في العبادة؟
عجيب.
Question asks, what should we do if the only result we seem to get from hunger is sleeping more and less energy for acts of worship?
غالبا إذا امتلأت بطن الإنسان يأتي النوم، إذا جاع يذهب النوم، غالبا هكذا. لكن إذا زاد شديد ممكن يؤدي إلى النوم، لكن نادر. كيف وأنت جوعان بيجيك النوم؟ نادر يعني.
So Habib is saying generally if a person overeats they would then feel sleepy. And if a person eats less, then it is very difficult for sleep to come over them unless they have gone into excess in hungering themselves, and this could lead to them feeling tired and sleepy.
بعضهم يقول كثرة الأكل تؤدي إلى كثرة شرب الماء، كثرة شرب الماء يؤدي إلى خمول في الجسم ويريد دائما كسل ونوم وهكذا.
And so some of the pious would say that eating a lot leads to one drinking a lot, and drinking a lot then leads to lethargy.
وغالبا اسمه الماء مع الأكل، أما ماء وحده طيب زين، لكن مع الأكل ما هو محمود.
And drinking water or mixing one's water, drinking water while eating food, this has a harmful effect or a lethargic effect on the body. However, if water is drunken separately, then this is not a problem.
Sometimes when we are doing an ibadah or we are doing a community walk, there's a time where the body and there's a burnout that happens, and then sometimes due to that burnout you miss a few of your tartib, and then that brings a hole in your tartib, and then how do we pick up ourselves and continue and maintain and get back into the rhythm?
بعض الأحيان إذا يقوم ببعض الخدمة في المجتمع يحتاج الخدمة من التعب الكثير، فقد يوم بدون نوم أو شيء، بعدين بعد ذلك الجسم خلاص ينهار، فترتيبهم العادي في الأذكار والأوراد يروح. كيف أن الإنسان يرجع إلى ترتيبه بعد هذا؟
نعم، يرجع إلى ترتيبه العادي، وما فاته مع التعب إن شاء الله يؤجر عليه، كما الذي يفوته أيام المرض يؤجر عليه.
So the question was asking, sometimes if one is in service of the community or doing community work, they might need to exert themselves beyond their normal, which leads to burnout, which then leads to a person not being able to get back onto their daily routine that they were on. And what should a person do? Habib says they should get back onto their tartib as soon as they can, and they are given the reward for whatever they have missed, just as the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ says that a person who is sick and who is traveling, they get the reward for the ibadah they used to do while they were healthy and while they were resident.
فما كان يواظب على أيام الصحة إذا ما قدر على أيام السفر والمرض يقول الله سبحانه اكتبوه وكأنه أتى به.
A person who used to be regular on certain forms of worship when they were healthy and when they were resident, when they travel and they are sick, Allah tells the angels to record those deeds for that person as though they were in their normal habit.
طيب.
المرأة تقول كيف يقول أن الإنسان من عرف نفسه عرف ربه، فكيف نعرف أنفسنا وكيف نقهر أنفسنا؟ كيف نكون زي ما يقولون موتوا قبل أن تموتوا. نعم. وكذلك خاصة للنساء الذي ليس عنده صحبة الشيخ، كيف نعرف أن الشيخ قائم بتربيتنا، وخاصة إذا هو في بلد ثاني أو إذا هو في المرزق. The question is asking, how do we know? No. How do we know our nafs? Because we have been told that whoever knows their nafs knows their Lord.
هذا بالنسبة من عرف نفسه عرف ربه. إذا عرف نفسك بالعجز والضعف وأنت محتاج إلى الله، هكذا يكفي كأنك محتاج إلى متذلل بين يديه. اعتقادك هذا كله معرفة لنفسك أنها ضعيفة، فعرفت نفسك ضعيفة يدل على أن الله أقوى، بس هكذا يكفي.
Habib is saying it suffices for a person to know, meaning to know their nafs, meaning to know their humility, their humbleness, and their incapacity in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that they are in need and in dire poverty in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a person knows this, then this is sufficient in the beginning.
ومن أقوى الأدلة على أنك عرفت نفسك أنك ضعيف ولا متواضعك للناس.
And the greatest sign that a person recognizes their nafs as being weak and that Allah is all powerful, the proof of that is that you are humble towards people,
وخصوصا من هو أصغر سنا منك
especially those who are younger than you,
أو عندك صفات ليست عنده
or that you have certain qualities which are not in others.
تتواضع له
Will you then be humble towards them?
تطلب الدعاء منه
Will you ask them for
تعتقد
supplication?
أنه أفضل منك
Will you believe they are better than you? This is a recognition of your nafs, meaning your own humility. كيف تموت قبل أن تموت؟
أيوة يعني يقصد موتوا قبل أن تموتوا، يعني قهر النفس هذا موت. لما تقهر الواحد ما تعطيه شيء كأنك قتلته. أيوة، فلما تقهر نفسك تريد شيء ما تعطيها، تريد شيء ما تعطيها، هذا كأنك قتلتها فتموت. بعدين قبل أن تموت الموت هذا الحقيقي هذا الظاهر.
And then the meaning of to die before we actually die, Habib is saying when you prevent your nafs and when you don't give your nafs whatever it wants, it is a form of killing the nafs. And so striving against the nafs, preventing it from everything that it wants, this is a way of killing the nafs before the actual death that a person will go through.
هكذا يقول سيدنا الشيخ بكر بن سالم، يعني أن ينبغي الإنسان يقتل نفسه كذا، يقتلها ألف قتلة. كيف ألف قتلة؟ قتلة وهتكفيها. لو كان الموت العادي لا مرة واحدة وخلاص عاد ما بيحيا، لكن تقتلها، تريد هذا تقتلها، تريد هذا تقتلها، هكذا حتى ألف طلبت لم تحققوا لها كأنك قتلتها 1000 مرة.
And Sheikh Bakar bin Salim used to mention this, that one should kill their nafs over 1,000,000 times. And Habib is saying if it was meant the physical killing of the body, then one time is sufficient. However, what is meant here is that you prevent your nafs from getting whatever it wants. Every time it wants something, you go against it and you prevent it. This is a form of killing the nafs.
أما بالنسبة للشيخ وعنايته، الشيخ الذي تميل نفسك إليه وأنك تعظمه وتحبه وتعتقد أنه من أفضل المشايخ، فهذا يدل على أن قوة تعلقك به، يدل على أنه هو كذلك معتني بك، على قوة تعلقك به.
And the question also is about one's sheikh and how does one know if one's sheikh is involved in one's tarbiyah. Habib is saying if you find yourself inclined to a certain sheikh and you believe that he is the best sheikh for you and the best sheikh in the world, and you find yourself loving him and connected to him, this love and connection that you have to him is a proof of his care and concern for you.
فغالبا تعظم المشايخ كلهم، لكن في واحد تعظيم خاص له، وهذا العناية تأتيك منه غالبا.
A person might respect and revere many shuyukh, however there is one particular sheikh which they have a special attachment for. That is the sheikh from whom one's spiritual care and concern comes from.
ونوادر أحيانا تعترض على بعض المشايخ وهو الذي يمدك الله بسببه. سبحان الله.
It's rare for a person.
ولا تحبه.
It might happen.
نادر هذا.
It's rare, but it might happen that you might not like a certain sheikh and he is indeed your spiritual provider.
كما انك في عالم الظاهر قد لا تحب فلان وهو يهدي لك هديه ويعطيك هديه منه هكذا من غير ما تشعر.
Just like in this world, sometimes you might not like a certain person, but he still may give you gifts and still may benefit you in some way.
بس هذه نادرة.
But these are exceptions to the rule.
طيب.
إذا أنت مع أهلك وهم يأكلون نوع من الطعام وأنت تريد تأكل شيء ثاني، هل هذا يعتبر من سوء الخلق؟
نعم في الحديث. أيوة.
The question is asking if you are not a fan of the food that your family is eating and wanted to eat something else, would this be considered a form of bad character?
في الحديث عن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم المؤمن يأكل بشهوة أهله والمنافق أهله يأكل بشهوته يكلف.
A tradition says that a believer eats according to the desires of their family, whereas a hypocrite, he allows his family to eat according to his desires.
فالمؤمن الحقيقي هو الذي يحبه أهله هو يحبه.
A true believer, whatever their family likes, they like.
والمنافق لا له يريد هكذا فيكلف أهله أن يأكلوا ما لا يحبوه.
However, a hypocrite, he insists that his family eat the things he likes.
فحاول أن تتماشى مع أهلك وأولادك وهكذا.
And so a person should strive to gel with their family and with their children and the things they like.
ثم إن تميزت بشيء لا بأس، لكن أعطهم منه قليلا لا تأكل.
And then if a person wants to still eat of the things they like, there's nothing wrong, and they should share this with their family and children.
حتى من العين أحيانا يحصل لما تتميز بأكل وهذا ما عنده شيء قد وهذا شافه إذا رأى قد يصيبه عين لكن يذوق ولو قليل بس خلاص تنكسر العين.
Because if a person eats something in front of others which he does not share with them or they do not have access to, then by them looking at that, this food can be affected by the evil eye. And so by allowing them to eat or even just taste it, this evil eye is broken.
ولو قليل طعمك خلاص تنكسر الحمد لله.
Even if you give them just a mere taste of it.
كما لو واحد ياكل وهذا ياكل في إناء مثلا كل واحد يريد يشوف ايش مع هذا وايش مع هذا بس نفوس هكذا لكن لو عرفوا خلاص قد يعرفوا ولا يحبه الحمد لله وقد يعرفوا ويحبه يحتاج انه يطعم قليل تنكسر شهوته.
Sometimes if for example a person might be drinking something, no one knows what is in that vessel. So people start looking in that vessel wanting to know what's inside. That is a cause of this evil eye. But if they look inside and they see, oh, it's just a normal drink, something they don't really like or desire, then that evil eye is warded away. Or if it's something that they like and desire, then you should give them just a small sip of it and that evil eye.
لكن إذا ما رآه مجرد ما يقدر يصيبه عين إذا مخبى بشيء لكن لو مكشوف مشكلة.
The problem is if it is exposed in a way in which a person, if they sort of raise their eyes, they're going to see what's inside. This is harmful. However, if it's in an enclosed container, no one knows what is inside, then there's no problem.
لذلك ينبغي الناس الآن هنا عندنا خاصة عندهم ما أدري في بلادكم يدابوا هذه الكيس هذا شفاف وهذا مصيبة يرى ما فيه لو يكون مستور يكون أفضل لأنه قد تشتري أنت لحمة أو موز أو شيء والثاني مسكين عمره ما يقدر يشتري فلما يرى يصيب لكن مستور ما
Habib is saying we don't know what the situation is like in your guys' countries, but here generally when people buy goods even from the grocery store, they put it in see-through plastic bags. And when you leave the shop, there might be people outside, a poor person, a beggar who sees. They can see through the packets, whatever you have bought, and this might cause them to be broken-hearted, and this is a way of evil eye coming onto those items. However, if it's something that's enclosed, where they cannot see what's inside, then this is a better way.
فإذا اشتريت شيء لأهلك أو لك أنت حاول أن لا يكون مكشوف.
And so whenever you buy something for your family or children, ensure that it's always enclosed and no one's eyes can see what is in it.
بعدين مع بتصيب بعين واحدة بتصيب ب20 عين ولا 40 عين هذا شاف وأصاب بعين وهذا شاف مشكلة كبيرة بعدين.
The problem is if it is something that can be seen, then it's not affected by just one evil eye, but 20 people might have seen it and you might get the effect of 20 evil eyes.
وتعرفون قصة الرجل الذي دخل مع عند الصحابة وكانوا يطبخون لحم في قدر فمسكين أحب أن أخذ وصلة من اللحم أمام المجموعة وأكلها خلاص بقيت في بطنه توجعه سنة كاملة لم تنهضم ولا تتحرك وبعد سنة سبحان الله جاء يشتكي إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقرأ عليها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فخرجها كأنها الآن أكلها نية محلها ما تغيرت أبدا قال إن بها 7 أنفس يعني 7 ناس رأوه لما شفتها أنت استحسنها.
There is the famous story
حصل النبي كان بيجي له مصيبة.
There's this famous story of a Sahaba who came one day while there was food being cooked in a pot. They were all waiting for that food to be prepared. One of them came and on his own took out a piece of meat and ate it in front of all of them. Meaning he didn't wait his turn. That piece of meat troubled him in his stomach for 1 entire year. And he fell ill. After 1 year he came back and he complained to the Prophet ﷺ, who read over him, and he then vomited out that piece of flesh as it was on the day he ate it, as though it wasn't even cooked. And this was because the Prophet ﷺ told him there were 7 people that were desiring to eat as well, and when they saw him eating this, he was affected by that evil eye.
In the Pakistan community, many times any problem that happens, they always blame on the evil eye. So then what should he do when that's the case? Is that correct to do like that?
Whenever?
So a lot of times in Pakistan community, whenever something bad happens to them, they just blame on the evil eye. So how is that correct to have that understanding?
في المجتمع الباكستاني خاصة لما يحصل أي نوع من الشر يتهمون الإنسان أنه حصل عليه عين كذا وكل شيء يقول أنه عين هل هذا
هذه قد تكون وصلوا إلى درجة الوسوسة هذه ما هو زين لا تسيء الظن بأحد أنت احتط نفسك وانتبه.
Habib is saying if a person believes everything is because of evil eye, then this is a form of whisperings from the shaitan. A person takes their precautions with regards to what Habib has mentioned and taught, and then the rest they leave to Allah.
بل قد يصيب الإنسان حتى نفسه يوم مثلا يحمل شيء ثقيل عندي قوة. لا تصيب نفسك، قد تصيب نفسك بنفسك أنت.
Saying it's not, sometimes people harm their own selves in this particular way. One day you might be able to pick up something heavy and you start thinking, oh, I have strength, I'm strong. He says you've affected yourself without even knowing.
أو تستحسن أموالك، عندك قصص أموال.
Or you think that you are someone of
قد
wealth.
تصيب مصيبة أنت تصيب نفسك.
And so you think you are someone of wealth, or you make a big deal and you become the cause of calamities coming onto your own wealth.
بدل ما تصير ظن بالناس أصير ظن بنفسك أنت.
And so rather than thinking the evil eye is from other people, one should think perhaps I am the cause of my
ممكن هذا أصابك، ممكن هذا أصابك، أيوة ممكن أنت أصبت نفسك.
So instead of thinking this one or perhaps that one should think I am the one who affected my own self.
وإنما أكون احتياط ولا تصير ظن بأحد.
And so a person takes their precautions and keeps a good opinion about everyone else.
وإذا حد اشتهر يقين إنه هذا يصيب بالعين، فهذا لابد أن يكلم وأن يقول بارك الله فيك، أو يطلب منه أن يتوضأ ويأخذ الماء يتغسل بهذا كما جاء عنه صلى الله عليه وسلم.
However, if someone is known that they are a person of evil eye, or that they have this habit of having this effect of people, and it's known in a community, then this person should be approached. They should be asked to make dua, and as it comes in the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ, this person should be asked to take a bath, or to make a ghusl, to wash, to take ablution, to take wudu, and then the affected person should take that wudu and take that water, that leftover water, and take a shower from it, and it will get rid of the evil.
والحبيب صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا استغسلتم، إذا واحد طلب منك أن تغسل قل له مرحبا تفضل، أنا ما أصبتك، لكن إذا وسوست أنت خذ ماء وصل له تفضل خذ.
The tradition also says
من غير أي شيء، لأن ممكن يكون ما في مشكلة، ليست عيب بالعين. قد يصيب الإنسان بها.
The Prophet ﷺ also says, if someone comes to you and asks you to give them the leftover of your wudu, meaning make wudu and give me this water so that I can shower with, no one should refuse, and you should say, marhaba, I don't think I'm the one that has had this evil eye on you, but take this water and you can.
ولا تلقي مشاكل. أنت وسوسة أنا لا إيش تريد مني؟ عفوا لا إن شاء الله ما أصبتك بشيء، أنت مشك فيا أنا تفضل خذ الماء.
And Habib is saying you don't have a bad attitude of this person and saying, what, do you think I'm the one that affected you with an evil eye? No, you say, marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan, I'm not the one who affected you with the evil eye, but if there's some doubt in your mind, here is the water, you take wudu, give them that leftover water, and they can then take a shower with it.
شيء.
ما هو من كان أحب الطعام إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم.
كان أحب الطعام إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الخبز واللحم صلى الله عليه وسلم.
What was the most favorite food of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم? It was bread and meat.
أيوه. وكان يحب الحلو كذلك كان صلى الله عليه
The
وسلم.
Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to also like sweet things.
الحلو البارد.
Sweet things that were cold.
عاوز كريم.
Not ice cream.
ممكن
هل هناك حد معين إلى ذكر لا إله إلا الله والسورة إخلاص في يوم واحد؟
ما ماشي عدد معين، وإنما جاءت الأخبار عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إلى 100.
The question is asking, is there any limit for reciting La ilaha illallah surah Ikhlas in a day? Habib is saying there is no limit to the amount of dhikr a person can do. However, the narrations do mention at least 100 times a day.
وسورة الإخلاص جاءت بعض الأخبار إلى 200.
And some traditions mention reciting surah Ikhlas
جاء في بعض
200 times a day.
الأخبار أن من قرأ بعد صلاة الفجر الإخلاص 50 مرة رفع الله له في ذلك اليوم عمل 50 صديق.
If tradition states, if a person reads Surah Ikhlas after the Fajr prayer 50 times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will write them the reward of 50 Siddiq, meaning 50 very pious people's works, and they will get the reward.
وكذلك ركعات قبل الجمعة 4 ركعات في كل ركعة 50 نقول هو الله أحد، يقولوا أن من واظب عليها لم يمت حتى يرى مقعده من الجنة.
And also before the Jum'ah Salah, if a person performs 4 rak'ats of Salah, in every rak'at they read Surah Fatiha and 50 times of Surah Ikhlas, and they maintain and are habitual in doing this, it is said that they will not die until they see their abode in paradise.
نعم. فهذه بعض الأعداد وبعدين على ما تريد أنت. نعم.
These are things which have been narrated. However, if a person wants to increase after that, they are free to do so.
لأنه جاء في بعض الأخبار أنه في عتيقة 70,000 من لا إله إلا الله إذا أتابها الإنسان يعتقه الله من النار، أو إذا قرأها 70,000 ووهبها إلى فلان ميت أو أحد من أقاربه فيعتقه الله من النار 70,000 من ليلة. ورد في بعض الأحاديث.
There are some traditions also that mention a form of dhikr which is known as the expiation from the fire, and that is to recite La ilaha illallah 70,000 times. A person can recite it for themselves, or they recite it on behalf of someone who has passed away with the intention that Allah free them from the fire.
سبحان الله بحمده 1000. سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله بحمده 1000. هذه عتق من النار.
And also an expiation from the fire is to read Subhanallah bihamdi, Subhanallah al-Azim 1,000
سبحان الله
times.
بحمده فقط.
Subhanallah bihamdi.
بسيطة جدا.
And just to read Subhanallah bihamdi 1,000 times.
وفي عتيقة كبرى. هذه عتيقة الصغرى سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله بحمده 1000 مرة. صغرى.
This expiation that Habib mentioned about reading Subhanallah bihamdi 1,000 times is known as the smaller expiation.
العتيقة الوسطى 70,000 من لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
The intermediary one is to read 70,000 times La ilaha illallah.
والعتيقة الكبرى 100,000 من قل هو الله أحد يسمى عتيق الله في الأرض.
And the greatest expiation or
فرقها أيوه.
being saved from the fire is to read 100,000. To read 1,000 times Surah Ikhlas, and this person will be known as
100,000.
100,000. This person who does this will be known as Allah's freed slave on this earth.
حتى يسمى هذا عتيق الله في الأرض.
No, he would be known in the heavens as the one whom Allah has saved from the fire, even though he walks.
كثير من سلفنا يعملونها مثل في الخلوة كمدة رمضان. لو عندك إجازة، أخذ إجازة عندك شهر شهرين 10 أيام يوزعها عليها هذه الساعات.
Many of the pious would
70,000 أو 100,000 نقول الله.
Would do this in their khalwa or in their seclusion in Ramadan. Or Habib is saying if you have a holiday or you have a break, for example, a month or two, then you split it up over a month, a month or a little more or less, and you can read this whether it's the 70,000 times or the 100,000 times of Surah Ikhlas. Marhaba.
خلاص. طب. شيء
100,000 times
100,000. يسأل 1000 ولا 100,000.
أنا أقول هذا 100,000.
Habib is just Habib is confirming it's 100,000 times, not 1,000.
Once in your lifetime or
هذا مرة واحدة في حياتك ولا يتكرر؟
إذا تريدها لك أنت مرة واحدة في حياتك، إذا تريدها لفلان وفلان بسم الله.
Are you saying for yourself you can read it one time in your life? If you
أنت لك تكفيك مرة واحدة.
It suffices for yourself to do just once. However, if you want to do it for other people, then you can repeat it for them.
لكن تريدها لأبيك لأمك لصاحبك لقريبه تفضل ولك أجر ولك مثله كذلك.
And if you want to do it for your parents or your friends or even people that have passed away, then you can do it for them, and you also get the reward for doing it a second or third time. كيف تقهر نفسك إذا تريد أن تمنع من الطعام ويقول لك كيف أنت بتترك هذا الطعام طول حياتك؟ تخاف من
طول حياتك
حادثة النفس.
ليش؟
لكن لو كنت تريد تمنع نفسك من طعام معين يقول لك الآن كيف أنت؟ The question is asking how can we overcome our nafs when it starts to tell you that you'll be restraining from food for days or years and it will be super hard, so you end up getting scared.
أقول لها لا مش طول حياتي، لأن الآن ما دمت تريدين الآن ما في، بعد يوم يومين من قبل ما تطلب أنت أعطها إياه ما في مشكلة.
Habib is saying the mujahada of the nafs is to prevent it on that particular day when it wants it. So you're only preventing it at that time because it wants it, so you tell it no. And after a few days before it wants, you can give it, that's not a problem. But the problem is to for you to listen to the nafs.
لكن أنت الآن تريدي؟ لا خذي شوفي هذا لا أريد الآن.
So you speak to your nafs and say you want this now. You say no, I won't give it to you.
ما حد فكر شيء فكر بيقول بعدين هذا يصيب بالعين بعدين.
No one should think that an evil eye will come. No one thinks that okay, if they want that food, there's going to become evil eye on the food and give it away.
إن شاء الله ما في عين اتركوها.
So inshallah there won't be an evil eye. كيف نستيقظ بدري إذا نجد صعوبة في استيقاظ التهجد? How can we wake up early if we find it difficult to wake up?
قالوا من الأشياء التي تعينك على قيام الليل ايش اسمه هذا هو عدم كثرة الأكل وعدم كثرة شرب الماء بالليل بالخصوص، بالليل لا بالليل، هذه الاثنين. وكذلك التسبيح الفاطمي تأتيب عند النوم.
So the question is asking how to wake up early. If one finds it difficult to wake up early, Habib is saying to not eat excessively or drink excessively at night especially, and also then to before sleeping to read the Tasbih Fatimi, the famous form of Tasbih, which is to read 33 times Subhanallah, 33 times Alhamdulillah, and 33 times Allahu Akbar.
عطاس في كتابه تذكير المصطفى إن شاء الله نأتي بها فائدة. تقرأ ألم نشرح 7 مرات عند النوم، ودعاء بسيط تجيبه يساعدك على قيام الليل. تذكير المصطفى إذا هو موجود معه.
A method mentioned in the book Tadhkir al-Mustafa in which a person reads Surah Al-Inshirah 7 times with a very simple dua. Habib is saying if we are able to, we'll bring this dua for you tomorrow.
إن شاء الله. إذا حد عنده تذكير المصطفى يأتي بالفائدة، ولا بكرة إن شاء الله نأتي بها الجلسة القادمة.
We were saying whoever has the book, we can look for it now. Otherwise, tomorrow we'll bring it. سمعنا أن من أقرب إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى الذي هم أقرب إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى عندما يموت يكون ألم الموت أخف عليهم. هذا صحيح. Question is asking, we have heard that if a person is really close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then their pain at the time of death is reduced. Is this true?
ليست قاعدة مضطردة على كل أحد له.
He is saying this is not a general rule.
بل قد يكون شديد التشديد عليه لأجل يترقى درجات كبيرة أو يتحملها عن أحد من أحبابه أو إيش اسمه يكون شديد الموت. غالبا هكذا، إما يترقت أو ذنوب تغفر عنه.
Habib is saying this is not generally the rule. A person might be very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and might still have some difficulty or experience pain in death, and this can be for different reasons. One is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala desires for them to reach higher spiritual stations, and so this is increased for them at the time of death. Other times people make dua for their pain to be increased so that it may be decreased for those whom they love at the time of death. Or it might also be because of some sins which might need to be forgiven.
لا تسيء الظن بأحد تراه يموت ويتعب في الموت. لا تسيء.
So we do not have a bad opinion about anyone whom we see at their death that they go through a difficult death.
حتى متجاهر بالمعاصي.
Even a person who was known to be a sinner.
قد يكون بواسطة هذه الشدة في الموت يغفر الله له ما
Because it might be because of that difficult death that they experience, Allah has forgiven all of their sins.
وهكذا عادة الله في من يحب.
And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with those whom He loves.
يعمل له شيء عند الموت من التعب حتى يأتي إليه وهو ما عليه شيء من الذنوب أبدا.
Allah gives him some difficulty at the time of his death so that as soon as his soul leaves, he is complete rest.
لكن إن شاء الله يعفو عنا قبل الموت إن شاء الله.
But we hope that Allah forgive us all of our sins before we die.
آمين.
آمين.
يكفي.
معنى البيع. معنى البيع. كيف نستفيد من البيع؟ يا مناسب مش مناسب.
البيعة هي تجديد عهد مع الشيخ، والحقيقة مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، والحقيقة مع الحق سبحانه وتعالى.
The question is asking what is the bay'ah and how does one benefit from it? Habib is saying bay'ah is merely a renewal of the covenant that one has taken from the Prophet ﷺ by believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ, and it's also a renewal of one's covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
لأن البيعة لما توعد كأنها وعد مع أحد فتستحي بعد ذلك أن تعمل شيء، ولا هي ما تحتاج، لكن تساعد نفسك على إقامة الأمور.
It's a form of a covenant. For example, when you take a promise with someone to say, I promise you I will do this or won't do this, you then feel shy to go against that promise.
No.
So even though you didn't take that promise, a person still needs to do what they need to do, but it's just a form of a confirmation.
وإلا لم يكن لها معنى مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، خلاص مع ربه الإنسان، لكن لا مع النبي حتى يستحي ما يعمل شيء، ومع الشيخ كذلك وهكذا.
And so likewise, a person would not have needed to take the covenant with the Prophet ﷺ or their sheikh because their duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are already binding upon them. But when one takes this covenant, then it creates a form of imperative, and they would then feel shy to go against that covenant which they.
ولما يعمل الإنسان البيعة يعينه الله.
And when a person takes this covenant, then they also gain a form of divine assistance. هل شعر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بالألم، أو هل الأنبياء شعروا بالألم أثناء وفاته؟
لا غالبا انهم ما يشعروا بالالم، لكن هو يقول صلى الله عليه وسلم ان اللهم شدد علي سكر حتى وهون على امتي، الا من باب خوفه على امته، الا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يشدد عليه.
The question is asking, did the Prophet ﷺ experience pain at the time of death? Habib is saying none of the prophets experienced pain at the time of death, but the Prophet ﷺ himself did make dua that Allah increase his pain at the time of death, even though he did not experience it, for the sake of his ummah.
إذا كان الصالحين من الأمة والأولياء الروح تخرج مثل الشعرة من العجين هذه، بخلاف المنافق مثل الشجرة.
The pious and the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when their soul leaves their body, it is like a piece of hair being removed from flour. Whereas the hypocrites and the disbelievers, when their souls are removed, it is like a silken cloth being rubbed over a thorn bush.
آخرة.
هل يجوز البيع من شيخين مختلفين؟
نعم ما في مشكلة.
يجوز.
لا ما في مشكلة أبدا. ما هناك مشكلة من شيخين من ثلاثة من أربعة من خمسة، ما في مشكلة أبدا. ما في مشكلة.
أن يأخذ البيع.
نعم ما في مشكلة.
Habib is asked the question.
لعله يستحي من هذا ما لا يستحي من هذا، لعله، ولكن الإنسان هو له شيخ اللي يعظمه كبير، هذا أقوى واحد تعلقه به القلبي، لكن قضية الشيخ كما الإجازة والده من هذا ومن هذا تبركا ما في مشكلة.
So the question is asking, can you take bay'ah from two sheikhs? Habib is saying, if a person wants to take barakah from different shuyukh, this is possible because he might see a benefit in this one and that one. However, when there is one sheikh that a person's heart will incline to, who will be one's spiritual guide.
ما شاء الله بارك الله فيكم.
What are some practical ways that we can increase our yearning for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet on a daily basis, especially in the West where there doesn't seem to be much barakah in time, where one can really sit and read, for example, the Quran or the Shama'il on a daily basis?
ما هو أعمال تطبيقي يقدر أن يفعله الإنسان في الغرب أن يزداد شوقا إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، وخاصة في الغرب ما نجد الوقت أن نجلس ونقرأ القرآن ونقرأ بعض الكتب عن الشمائل.
لا يكون فكرك دائما أهم شيء، المرء حيث قلبه لا حيث جسده. فكرك معلق بالمشايخ وبالأولياء وبالحق سبحانه وتعالى مهما كان، حتى وأنت في السوق وأنت تكون دائما قلبك معلق بالحق.
So the question is asking, what are practical steps that one can improve their yearning for Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, especially in the West where one might not have time to sit and read Quran or read books of the Shama'il? Habib is replying by saying that you need to be with Allah and the Prophet ﷺ and the pious in your thoughts and in your heart. Even though you are at work or might even be in the marketplace, your thoughts need to be with them constantly.
واذكر الله دائما على أي حال.
And whatever you are able to do of the remembrance of Allah whenever time allows.
ما هو لازم تستقبل قبلة، ما هو لازم متوضي، ما هو لازم.
It's not necessary that a person always be in a state of wudu when they do the remembrance of Allah, or that they are facing the qibla, or that they are just sitting in one particular place, but their heart needs to be with Allah.
المواظبة على هذا تنفتح لك.
And so a person who is regular in doing these things, they will receive openings.
لا ييأس الإنسان يقول أنا لي سنة كاملة حتى 10 سنين تستمر على هذا ما في تعب ولا شيء تصل
A person shouldn't think, oh, 1 year I've been doing this and nothing has happened. Habib is saying it doesn't matter even if a person has to wait for 10 years.
بارك الله.
I have a question. Why does it take so much hardship when it's trying to cleanse the heart? And what can one do to increase in when it's not?
لماذا يوجد صعوبة كثيرة جدا في تزكية النفس، وكيف الإنسان يعين نفسه على هذا؟
لأن الإنسان النفس من داخل، العدو لما يكون من داخل مشكلة، وكان من برا بتضارب وبتهرب منه، لكن النفس لأنها من داخلك.
So the question is asking, why is the purification of the nafs so difficult and how can we go about doing that? Habib is saying it is difficult because it is an enemy that resides within inside of you. An enemy that is outside is easy to monitor and easy to fight. However, when he is inside, it's much more difficult.
وهذا ابتلاء من الله.
And this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
يريدك تخالف نفسك.
Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala desires you to make that effort and go against your nafs.
فالنفس أعظم من الشيطان.
Because this nafs is a greater enemy than the devil.
حتى الشيطان ما كان قوي في هذا اللي لما يجري من ابن آدم مجرى الدم لما يدخل في جسمه أما من برا ترى ما في مشكلة.
Because shaitan himself has no power over a human being until he's able to flow within the veins of a person like blood. From the outside he can't do anything.
وأقوى شيء تحاربه الشيطان الذي يدخل جسمك الجوع.
The greatest weapon a person can fight the devil which flows through the veins of a human being like blood is with hunger.
أيوة الشيطان يجري من ابن آدم مجرى الدم فضيقوا مجاريه بالجوع.
The Prophet said that the devil flows through the veins of the children of Adam alayhi salam like blood and so constrict their ways with hunger.
فالنفس لأنها من داخل مشكلة كبيرة.
But this nafs resides inside of the person and this is its problem, its difficulty.
يعينك الله عليها.
Allah assists you
والحاضرين إن شاء الله.
and everyone else.
بسم الله.
How can we distinguish between like the suggestions of our nufus and what we actually are, right? Like what our reality is. How can we distinguish what it's telling us and what we're telling ourselves, what the reality is, right?
Okay.
Which one do we consider to oppose?
كيف الإنسان يفرق بين يوسوس به نفسه وما هو الواقع والمطلوب منه واقعيا. So the question is asking, how does one differentiate between the thoughts that come from their nafs and one's reality, or what is required from them in one's reality?
غالبا يعرف هذا بنور الباطن ونور الباطن بكثرة الذكر.
A person generally will only be able to discern this through an internal spiritual light, and this internal spiritual light can only be attained through an abundance of the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
فإذا تنور بنور الذكر يظهر له أن هذا من نفسك ولا من ولا من الملك ولا من الشيطان.
And if a person's internal state has been illuminated with an abundance of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it will become clear to them that this is from your nafs, this is from the shaitan, this is from the angels.
لكن في هذه الأمور أحسن تكون عندك نوع من الوسوسة فأعتقد أنها من الشيطان والنفس فابعد عن الأشياء.
And it is also sometimes a good thing if a person thinks that thoughts are from the shaitan, especially if it's something that they desire, so that they can stay away from it.
إن شاء الله يجعلك الله لك فرقانا تفرق به بين الحق والباطل.
Habib makes dua that Allah give each and every single one of us a criteria in which we are able to differentiate between truth and falsehood.
التقوى.
And this is attained through the taqwa.
الله تعالى أنت تقول الله يجعل لكم فرقانا يعني نورا تميزون به بين الباطل والغير.
Because Allah says in the Quran that if you have the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then He will grant you this criteria within which you will be able to differentiate between right and wrong.
ما شاء الله حفظه.
If Allah puts someone in the first paradise, but He puts his friend in the fifth paradise, will they be able to interact with each other?
إذا الله سبحانه وتعالى وضع إنسان في جنة الأدنى والآخر في جنة الأعلى، هل التواصل بينهما؟
في تواصل. غالبا من الأعلى ينزل عندك. ما نادر تطلع عندك.
The question is asking if someone's in the first paradise and his friend is in the fifth paradise, will they have any interaction? Habib is saying yes, they'll interact. The one who's in the higher level will come down to the lower level, and the one's lower level won't be able to go up to the higher level.
لكن إذا بينك وبينه محبة قوية قد يطلبك فيسمح له ربي أن يطلع عنك.
However, if there is an affirmed and a solid bond of love between you, then the one who is on a lower level will be allowed to ascend to the level of the one.
طلب من فوق.
He will then be requested because of that covenant of love between them. He will then reside with him in the higher paradise.
So does that mean that if your friend has an extremely strong love for you, they can actually take you up to their level?
يعني بالمحبة يجر الإنسان إلى المستوى.
نعم.
The question is asking, does this mean that because of this love you can actually raise people to your levels in paradise? Habib is saying yes.
نعم نعم. بالمحبة يصل الإنسان درجة المحب. نعم.
Because of this love, a person will reach the level of the one whom they love.
المرء مع من؟
The Prophet also said a person will be with the one whom he loves. هل هناك طريق معين للتوبة من الذنوب والمعاصي الماضية؟ وهل هناك دعاء لاجتناب المعاصي والشهوات؟ Question is asking, is there a preferred way to make tawbah from previous sins, and is there a dua for staying away from desires?
كثرة الاستغفار.
So Habib is saying an abundance of istighfar.
خصوصا الوارد عنه صلى كل يوم أكثر من 100 مرة رب اغفر لي وتب علي إنك أنت التواب الرحيم رب اغفر لي وتب علي إنك أنت التواب الرحيم رب اغفر لي وتب علي إنك أنت التواب خصوصا بعد الضحى.
Especially to read رب اغفر لي وتب علي إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. This dua to read it at least 100 times every day, especially after the duha or after in the morning.
فيتوب الله عليك.
And a person should be regularly doing this, and his hope Allah will then forgive
استغفر
them.
الله العظيم الذي لا اله الا هو حي القيوم واتوب اليه 3 وان فر من الزحف وان كان ذنوبه مثل زبد البحر.
It also comes in a tradition that whoever reads this istighfar, astaghfirullah al-azim alladhi la ilaha illa huwa al-hayy al-qayyum wa atubu ilayh, whoever reads this 3 times with complete presence of heart and mind, then Allah will forgive all of their sins, even if they were someone who ran away from the battlefield.
نعم سلام.
دعاء لاجتناب من الشهوات.
ويكثر كذلك من قول اللهم حبب الي الايمان وزينه في قلبي وكره الي الكفر والفسوق والعصيان اجعلني من الراشدين.
And the dua in the Quran, as is mentioned, to stay away from desires. Oh Allah, make faith beloved to us and make disbelief hateful to us. اللهم حبب الإيمان
وزينه.
Allah, make faith beloved to us and beautify it within our souls,
كره الي الكفر
and make dislike to us disbelief and transgressions and sins.
شيء.
How do we know when one thing of family is just desire compared to when it's one Allah clearly made form of worship?
You mean marriage or having children? كيف يعرف الإنسان إذا شهوة للزواج شهوة أم خير أنه يكون له أولاد ويكون له يعني امتثال أمر الله سبحانه وتعالى.
ما يقول شيء يصحح نيته ويقدم بس وخلاص.
In person who question, how does one know if their intention to marriage is from their nafs or following the command of Allah? A person corrects the intention and goes ahead.
صح النية يقدم ما في داعي للكلام هذا لأنه هذا الشيطان بيكسر له هذا نية صالحة وقدم تزوج.
Correct your intention and get married, otherwise shaitan is going to play games with you.
يقدم بس. هذه النية مش طيبة أقول إن شاء الله بصحح النية خلينا أقول.
So shaitan might tell you your intention is not pure, say it's fine, I'm going to correct my intention, still go ahead.
يسعد حفظ الحراسة والحماية والصفاء والنقاء وارتباط بالمصطفى وأهل الصدق والوفاء. يسعد منا كل منا سعادة كبرى في الدنيا والأخرى. قوي إيمان حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان تعالى من الراشدين. ويسعدنا سعادات ما تقطع على باج وربطنا بسيدنا محمد مولى بلال ثبتنا على الإسلام والإيمان وينشر بنا ذلك في كل مكان وعلى كل نية صالحة بسر الفاتحة وراح السلف الصالحين أجمعين وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
الفاتحة.
بسم الله.